Hi, I'm Steve Frederick with Lucrative Careers. Welcome. I'm so glad you joined me for this webinar. I've been a career coach for over 25 years, and I've helped thousands of clients to reach their career goals. I've seen a lot of job searches, and I know what works and what doesn't. And I'd like to share some of what I've learned so that you can avoid some of the painful and expensive mistakes that many people make. These are a few big job search mistakes and how you can avoid them. My promise to you at the end of the webinar, you're going to be able to recognize and fix mistakes that can sabotage your job search and hold you back in your career. This webinar is for people who are competent professionals who could use a little guidance so they can actually reach their career goals. I want to help you to work smart, and I want to give you a success formula that really works. As I said, I've been doing this work for over 25 years. And I have to say that what is most gratifying is that so many times former clients have sent over their colleagues, they sent over their wives, their kids, they sent over their friends because they really appreciate the service that they get here. Here's what a few clients had to say. And I'm not going to read the slides. You can do that. But I wanted to say that we have often asked our clients, what do you most appreciate about working with us? And many of these people have worked with other coaches. They work with outplacement companies, and they've consistently say that what they most appreciate is the individual attention and the results. One client said, I couldn't believe how much time you spent to get my resume and LinkedIn profile just right. And that was a good thing because with all the time that I spent networking, I got hired because my manager saw my profile on LinkedIn, decided I was the guy that he wanted for the job, and I got hired. Now, today you're going to learn what holds people back in their careers, how many of these mistakes you're making, and what you can do to turn things around. So let's get started. Here are some really big mistakes that sabotage job searches and keep people stuck in jobs that aren't right for them. Now, some of these mistakes might sound obvious, but just because you know you should be doing something does not mean you are actually doing it or you know how to do it. A lot of people think they're doing these things well, but they're not. I also find these mistakes come in bunches. People with terrible resumes usually don't speak about themselves well, which means they don't network well, and so on. Our first mistake is a lackluster verbal self-presentation. I said these mistakes might seem obvious. You might be thinking, oh, of course I should have a great self-presentation. But it's not so easy. It is tough to sell ourselves. I've seen even top salespeople and top marketers who fail at this. You see, it really goes against our upbringing. Our parents tell us to be humble. They say, don't brag. And in corporate culture, they tell you, always speak about what the team did, not what you did. But when you're in job search, you've got to toot your own horn. You've got to speak about what I did, not just what the team did, or you're not going to get anywhere. Another thing that comes up is that we're just too close to the situation. It's like trying to paint a picture of ourselves with the benefit of a mirror. And consequently, I get a lot of this. A client that I worked with showed the resume we developed to his wife. And he said, she got all excited. She said, I finally understand what you do. Now think about that. If your own spouse doesn't have a clue about what the heck you do, what are the chances that you are communicating about yourself effectively and powerfully when you're in networking meetings or when you're in a job interview? And this, by the way, is not uncommon. Another thing that people do to sell themselves short is that they rely on titles or years of experience to sell themselves. It's great that you've got X years of experience, but people want to know, what have you done with those years of experience? How have you produced value? Now, I want to stress that a verbal presentation about yourself is really tough. But if you don't grapple with this, it is going to cost you big time. And it's not enough to just develop it. You've got to practice it and keep it vital. I find that we human beings are very invested in selling ourselves short. And a lot of my work is to keep you from doing that. I want you to let the world know just how good you are. Some of you may have seen this quote. Nelson Mandela liked this so much that he used it in his inaugural address. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God, and your playing small doesn't serve the world. I want to tell you a story just to show you how critical it is to communicate about yourself powerfully. And by the way, I'm going to speak about a number of people during this webinar. Most of them, I have changed the names, I've changed the pictures, but they are very real people. Jonathan's name is real. He came to me because he completed a master's degree in healthcare administration, but he had zero experience working in the field, and getting a job seemed to be daunting. See, he'd been a weapons technician supervisor in the Air Force, a pastor, a graphic designer, and a computer instructor, but no healthcare experience. So I worked with him to uncover some of the themes of his success, things he could take and use in whatever field he was in. And we found he was an inspirational leader and a highly competent manager of people and big budgets. Now, it happened that Jonathan's son was on a soccer team, and one of the other dads worked in healthcare administration. And before Jonathan and I started working together, Jonathan had mentioned his interest to that man, and the man had given him some general advice. But Jonathan told me that as we worked together, he started to speak about himself more effectively, more powerfully. And the man was paying more attention. He seemed intrigued. And then one day, this man called him with HR on the line, and he made him a job offer. Having a great self-presentation pays big dividends. Mistake number 2 is focusing your job search on online postings. Lots of folks spend months and months doing nothing but applying for jobs online, which is unfortunate because most of the best jobs are not published. You're not going to find them online. Certainly higher level positions, much less likely to be advertised. Consequently, what's left are bottom of the barrel, entry level, high turnover positions, straight commission sales, scams, and a few good jobs. So not only are you competing for jobs that tend not to be all that good, but you are competing in an arena in which the competition is downright fierce. Companies report getting dozens, even hundreds of resumes for just a single position. Plus, you're relying on your resume or your profile to sell yourself. Not what you say, not your smile, not your personality, but your bits and bytes in a computer or a piece of paper. Now, all that said, I don't recommend that clients ignore online posts, but I do recommend that they limit the percent of their job search time to 10 to 15%. And the rest of the time, spending it on more productive pursuits. I want to tell you about Marcus. Again, Marcus is a real man, not his real name, not his real picture. Marcus came to me when he was out of work for about a year, and this was brutal for him. He really needed to be providing for his family, and when he came to me, he was beaten up, depressed. He had been working really hard in his search, doing everything he knew, but unfortunately, what he knew was applying for jobs online, for everything that even seemed like a remote possibility for him. And he was applying with a mediocre resume. So, of course, he was getting largely ignored. He did get a couple of interviews, but when he went, he had no idea how to sell himself, so he didn't get hired. So, worked with him, we rebuilt his self-esteem, changed his resume, how he spoke about himself, and got him away from his computer and out talking to people who could actually help him in his job search. And he got hired in just 2 months. Right. The third mistake is searching for vacancies and openings. Now, you might ask, why is that a mistake? Certainly, it makes sense to look for companies that are hiring, right? Well, to a degree. But we have to ask, first of all, what is an opening anyway? An opening occurs when someone quits, gets fired, or dies. But the thing is, they only exist in people's minds. It's not a physical thing. Like if there's an opening in your pipe in the basement and water is gushing out, you want to plug that opening right away. But not the case necessarily in companies. A lot of times the tendency is not to hire when there's an opening. And even if they do, the openings only exist for a short period of time. And consequently, the odds of stumbling across openings are pretty small. So if you keep asking people about openings, you're not going to be very productive. And we're going to talk more about this in mistake number 4. All right. Mistake number 4 is ineffective networking. Now, most people know they should network, but a lot of people don't know how to do it well. You see, smart networking is not just talking to lots of people. So, and to illustrate this, I want to tell you an extreme example of this, which was run this story. Real woman, not her real name, not her real picture. Rhonda is a senior executive, and she came to us and she said, I'm doing everything right in my job search. And I have been out of work for 8 months. What's going wrong? So we told her that we would try to figure it out for her. And at first glance, it did seem like she was doing everything right. Her resume was great. She had lots of accomplishments. Her LinkedIn profile wasn't bad. She spoke well. She dressed well. She's a delightful person. And she had been networking like crazy. She showed us her calendar, 3 to 5 networking events every week. And in between, she was having coffees with individuals she met at these events. Starbucks was getting rich, but Rhonda wasn't getting hired. So we did our detective work and asked her a bunch of questions and said, well, what do hiring decision makers say to you? And she said, I haven't talked to any hiring decision makers. Okay, that's bad. You've been networking for 8 months and you haven't talked to a single person who could actually hire you. When you talk to people in your industry, are they willing to refer you to people who could hire you? And she said, I haven't been talking to people in my industry. So this was the classic example of working hard, but not working smart. She was talking to random people she met at these networking events, and who knows what they talked about. Maybe they talked about the weather or about their kids. She had no networking plan. So we fixed what she was doing, and she got hired in a few weeks. Smart networking is not asking about openings. Going back to our last mistake. Now, think about this. It's just not respectful to people in your network. If I'm in your network, I like you. I want to help you. I'll feel good if I can help you. But if all you asked me about is openings, chances are really good I can't help you, and I'm not going to feel good about this. See, I'm happily employed. Openings are not useful information for me. I'm not looking for openings. And as we've said, they're only around for a short period of time. You are not letting me help you with what I do know. So here's what you want to accomplish. Establish rapport with the person. Then you can get information. What's happening in the company? What's happening with the competition? What are industry trends, as examples? Get some advice. They might say you're not yet qualified for the job you're going for, or you're shooting too low, or they can confirm that you're on target. They might tell you about options you hadn't even considered or even heard of. They might tell you about things that make yourself more competitive. They can give you contacts. You want to be expanding your network, getting to talk to the people who can actually hire you, and you want to be actively remembered. So, smart networking, you want to have a written and researched plan. What companies, nonprofit, government agencies do I want to work for? Who do I need to talk to? Whether it's an individual or the title of an individual, like I need to talk to the controller or I need to talk to the sales manager. How you can make them money or make improvements. What's the case for you? And you want to be well prepared so you make the right impression. If you're not making a good impression, you would be better off not doing any networking. Okay, now I want to tell you to reinforce why asking for openings is so ineffective. See, we want to give referrals to the hiring decision makers. And let me give you an example here. Let's say I'm a manager and I've got 10 direct reports. And since I'm a really good manager, I'm keeping close tabs on how each of them is doing. You see, Leslie's doing fabulous. She's actually too good for this job. And I know I've got to promote her quick or I'm going to lose her to the competition. And I've talked to human resources and it's in the works, but things don't happen real quickly here. Daphne. I have talked to Daphne and said, look, I like you. I appreciate that how hard you're working with this, but this just is not a good fit for you. I'm not going to throw you out on the street, but you really need to start looking for a new job. Joanne, as long as I've known her, she's been talking about moving to Alaska, and who knows, maybe one of these days she's actually going to do it. And then I'm going to have to replace Leslie, Daphne, Joanne. Also, do the math. I've got 10 direct reports. People tend to stay in their jobs 2 to 3 years. How long is it going to be before somebody quits? Plus, the CEO talked to me. He said there's a really good chance we're getting a new contract. And if we do, I'm going to need to hire 1, maybe 2 new people. So, with all that going on, I am eager to talk to good talent. I want to have people in the wings that I can call on so that when I promote Leslie, when Daphne leaves, if Joanne moves, etc., that I'm not going to be caught unawares. I've got people, my career lives and dies by having good people. So I want to know people who know what they're doing. Now, what I want you to notice is if you were to ask someone on my staff if there are any openings, they would tell you no, because there aren't any. And then you might walk away and say, gosh, that's too bad because I really would have liked to have worked here. And you would have missed out. Mistake number 5 is letting others control your job search. And in particular here, I want to talk about recruiters. I want to stress nothing against recruiters, but just remember that Nobody cares about your job search as much as you do. I tell my clients recruiters may very well be helpful to you, but don't rely on them. Remember, they work for the employers. They don't work for you. Now, there are different types of recruiters, and here I'm going to focus on executive recruiters. They're generally looking for a tiny percentage of people with a history in the same industry, a great track record, hard to find skills, which means most of us are not what they're looking for. This doesn't mean you're not a great employee. It doesn't mean that hiring decision makers won't be happy to hire you. It just means that recruiters may not be the best vehicle for you to get hired. Our client Bill found out about this the hard way. Bill was a superstar in his industry, a national sales manager. And then there was a big downturn in his industry and he got laid off. He decided he wanted to change industries and he came to us for help. So we helped him to lay the foundation of his campaign, resume, LinkedIn, personal presentation. And then they said, okay, now it's time to start networking. And Bill said, nope. He said, recruiters have always been there for me. So I'm going to sit home and wait for the recruiters to call me. We said that's a bad idea, but he insisted. And then a couple months later, nobody had called. So Bill finally got a hold of one of these recruiters and he said, so what's going on? How come I'm not getting interviews? And the recruiter said, Bill, you have zero experience in this industry. I would lose professional credibility if I sent you out. So that was hard for Bill to hear, but he said, okay, I get it. I got to be my own recruiter. I got to take control. He rolled up his sleeves, got busy, started networking like crazy, and he got hired. Now, there's more about recruiters. Be sure to read my article, 8 Things to Know About Recruiters. Don't waste your time and theirs. And I'll send you a link to that later in the webinar. Mistake number 6, doing it alone. Now, we all hire experts, right? Plumbers, electricians, lawyers, doctors, dentists, and so on. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One, we don't know how to do something, or we just know it will get done better, faster, with a lot less stress, or we just don't like doing it. Doing it ourselves can be time-consuming, messy, and sometimes expensive. In my case, I hate doing home repair. I do some of it, but I don't enjoy it, and I'm not good at it. Now, the other day, the light and the fan in our kitchen ceiling fan stopped working. So I concluded that I needed to buy a new one. And I thought about installing it myself. I know enough to turn off the power, so I won't electrocute myself. But in the end, I wimped out and called the handyman. And I was so glad that I did, because he was here for all of 3 minutes, and he said, your ceiling fan is fine. Nothing wrong with it. Your light switch doesn't work. You need a new one. Oh, thank you. I could have spent hours on this project if I had not called him. Going to the store, getting the ceiling fan, taking down the old one, putting up the new one, and then tearing out my hair in frustration because it wasn't working. Because I would have been working on the wrong problem. And as a coach, I see that as being an important thing that I do. I want to keep you working on the right problem. As an example, I had a client a couple of years ago. He's a very good accountant, and he hates talking about himself. So after we got the resume and the LinkedIn done, I said, well, we should really work on your verbal presentation for networking and for job interviewing. But he didn't want to do that. So he avoided me for a little bit. And I found out that he had been sending out these resumes to online postings, and he was getting a lot of interviews. So I said, well, more power to you. That if you can get hired without networking, that's great. but let's work on the job interviewing. Didn't want to do that. Then he came to me and he said, I'm not getting hired. So I think we need to do some more work on the resume. And he said, no, your resume is fine. It's getting you interviews. We need to work on the thing that you are avoiding. A coach can also help you to avoid taking the wrong job. Prevent expensive negotiation mistakes, things that can cost you thousands of dollars and maybe will lose you the job altogether. Keep you from getting frustrated like I would have been if I tried doing that ceiling fan myself. Save you a ton of money. Think about it. If a coach can get you hired 2 months earlier, that is a big pile of cash that you're saving. Can help you to land a better job than you might on your own. And also to take the big, overwhelming job search and break it down into manageable pieces. Plus, hold you accountable and motivate you. I want to tell you a story about David. He's a young IT guy, not his real name, not his real picture, but a very real guy. So David had taken a year off to get a certain certification and was studying for it like crazy, but it was a very difficult one. And he failed it. And he felt humiliated. Now, at this point, a friend referred him to us, and he decided not to work with us. He said, I'm going to go along. Then a bunch of months later, he came back. He was depressed. He was beaten up. He was thinking that he was never going to get hired ever again. All he could see was failure. So I worked with him, restored his confidence, taught him to sell himself, and he was hired in 3 months. Okay, I'm going to take just a couple minutes for a brief commercial. Be sure to stick around because there's more mistakes to talk about, and I'm going to give you a link to the article on recruiters so you don't waste their time or yours. Now, after the webinar, we have two options. One, we can part ways. You've learned some things and you can implement them on your own. Or option two, I can take an active role in helping you to land a great job, to make more money, to get more satisfaction in your work, to advance, to get that work-life balance. I want to tell you about my career action plan meeting. These are just some of the reasons why people they hate their job. They feel stagnant, feel like it's time to move up. They're struggling in their job search. They want to do something different. That maybe they're not sure what's next for them, and more reasons. What the career action plan is, it's a 90-minute to 2-hour meeting. We'll take a look at your career, what you're doing in your job search, if you started one, what you're doing to advance in your career, where you'd like to go, and come up with a plan. Now, normally the cost is $225, but if you act now, you can get it for $185. Now, sometimes one meeting is all that it takes. That's what happened with Sam. His wife sent him over to us. She said, your resume stinks. You should go and talk to these guys. So we laughed and said, okay, Sam, let's take a look at your resume. And actually, his resume was fine. And then he told us about what he was doing in his job search, also fine. But he said, Sam, you're going after the wrong job. Sure, you could stay in administration if you want, but a guy like you would be much more successful in sales. So he said, thank you very much, left, and he chose not to work with us further. In fact, we never saw him again, but a little while later, he sent us a note, and he said, frankly, I was thinking you were crazy after our meeting. Me in sales? But the more I thought about it, I thought, why not? I could do sales. And he had some conversation, he got encouragement from the people he asked about it, and he got hired selling medical equipment. He said, I'm loving the job, making lots more money. Thank you so much. Then I also want to tell you about Andrea. She was an unemployed attorney. Again, not a real name, not a real picture, but a very real person. She came to me because she wanted to get hired faster. But as often happens, as we started to work together, she started thinking about what she had been doing and her satisfaction or lack thereof. And she said she had a revelation after our second meeting. She said, I have been killing myself. I've been working these 80-hour weeks. No more. I want to have a life. So I helped her to find a position with more reasonable hours. And when they offered her the job, she was set to take what they offered, as people often do, even though it was considerably less than what she was making before. I coached her to ask for more money, and she got lots more. Okay, so ask yourself, if you're unemployed, how much does it cost you to not get another job soon? How much are you not making by being unemployed per week? And if you are employed, how long are you willing to put up with the status quo? So again, if you're ready to take the plunge, I have a special offer for you. $185 instead of $225, and I'm going to include 4 special bonuses. The first is my special report, 9 resume mistakes that make resumes downright awful. These mistakes will practically guarantee your resume will be unseen, ignored, rejected, and maybe even ridiculed, a $65 value. Bonus number 2, a resume evaluation. Now, trust me, you do not want to go through a job search with an awful resume. You also don't want to be wondering if your resume is any good. In my experience, most people have no idea if they've done a good job or not. Some people, like Sam, have good resumes, but they think their resume stinks. Others think their resume is the best thing since Shakespeare, but it's so bad they should burn it or delete it before anyone sees it. And most people are somewhere in between. Now, I can review your resume and give you a detailed analysis of it, and then you can either fix it on your own or you can hire me to fix it for you. But get the peace of mind that comes with having a resume that you feel confident in and that works for you. $60 value. Bonus number 3 is an electronic copy of the 12 biggest mistakes job hunters and career changers make and how to avoid them. Discussion of mistakes that we talked about here today and more. A $70 value. Very enlightening. Bonus number 4 is an ebook copy of Jack Chapman's book, Negotiating Your Salary, How to Make $1,000 a Minute. This book has been the Bible of salary negotiations for a lot of people throughout the US and Canada for many years. And it helps them through the uncomfortable process of negotiating salary. It can help keep you from being screened out, and it can also help you to put thousands more in your pocket, plus getting benefits and perks. So $185, again, with these bonuses for $220. Now, on this webpage, there are 2 links. One is for the Career Action Plan meeting. That's paid, as I've been talking about. The other is, maybe you want to talk first. You have a 15-minute consultation for free. Or maybe you want to talk about other services, such as getting help with your resume, your LinkedIn profile, or job interview prep. Again, they're both here on this webinar, on this webpage. And now, back to the big mistakes. The mistake number 7 is failing to brand yourself. When you are in a job search, whether you know it or not, you are supposed to be marketing yourself. And the goal of marketing is to distinguish yourself from the competition. Now, corporations do this all the time, right? We see the De Beers say a diamond is forever. Disney tells us that they are the happiest place on earth. Allstate says you're in good hands. And even says we try hard. But what I see is that in job search, even most marketers fail to do this for themselves. Now, it's difficult to do it for yourself, but If you look at a few LinkedIn profiles, you're likely to see headlines like this: accountant, marketing professional, tax attorney. Very bland, very generic, very boring. You look like everybody else in your field. Now, I want to tell you a story about Howard. Again, real man, but not in the real picture. He's a CFO. And when he came to me, he'd been out of work for about 6 months and was getting nowhere. So looked at his LinkedIn profile and it said CFO looking for a job. I said, okay, that's not very good. Let's see if we can do better than that. And indeed, there was a lot to talk about. So in our work together, it uncovered that Howard is the CFO of 5 very successful startups. So I branded him as the CFO who turns great business ideas into reality. And I told him to put that on his resume, put that on his LinkedIn profile, to speak about himself that way. And very shortly, he had 5 companies interviewing him and he got hired. So don't be just like everybody else. Be sure to brand yourself. Mistake number 8, dragging negativity into your job search. I often see people who have had a really negative experience in their last job. Somebody did them wrong. After years of loyal service, the boss fired you and gave your job to his nephew, who had just graduated from college, for heaven's sakes. Somebody, not you, screwed up, but they blamed you and you got fired for it. Or you richly deserved a promotion, but instead you got laid off. Yes, they did you wrong. Yes, you're angry about it. That's human. That's natural. But you can't hold on to it. I've never forgotten, I just started in this career coaching firm a lot of years ago. And this man, a former client, had secured a job, gotten fired just a couple months into his job, and he came back to see us to get some additional help. I was in the room when he walked in, and it was like a cloud had descended in the room. The man was seething. He was just radiating negative energy. Do not be like that man. Now, I speak from authority here because I was that man. I want to tell you how I handled that. This was very early in my career. I had a job where I worked with a man named Joe. And Joe was a pain. He was always trying to make me look bad. He was a constant irritant. I couldn't stand the guy. And there was a big layoff in the middle of a horrible recession. And I got laid off. And I'm convinced that Joe had a lot to do with me being one of the people who was let go. Well, I'm not getting hired. My savings evaporated. I had to write a credit card check for my rent. And I blamed Joe. The more miserable I got, the more I hated him. In my mind, I killed Joe a lot of times. And in some rather creative ways, I have to say. But I came to my senses. I sat down with myself and said, look, this is eating you up inside. You need to do something about this. And then this voice said, why don't you call Joe and apologize? And this other voice said, what? No way, sister. Joe's a jerk. That man should apologize to me. I'm not doing it. But then first voice came back and said, let's say, Joe, this was 97% responsible and you were 3%. Why don't you apologize for your 3%? I did not want to do this, but I didn't know what else to do. And like I say, this was eating me up. So I bit the bullet, picked up the phone, called Joe. He was really surprised to hear from me. And I said, Joe, I just want to apologize for my part in what went on between us. And in that moment, there was this magical, mystical transformation in our relationship. All of a sudden, I felt this side of Joe that I didn't know existed. He was warm and nice, and he even offered to help me with my job search. Now, I did not take him up on that, but the important thing was that I never again had a hateful thought about Joe. I moved on. So, and I advise people to do whatever it takes to move on. If apologizing is appropriate, do that. Pray, meditate, talk to a friend, talk to a therapist, take a workshop, whatever works for you. But get this handled, because if you don't, it's going to hurt you big time. All right. Our last mistake today that we're going to talk about has to do with resumes. We can talk for hours about resumes, but I'm going to focus in on a couple of things: neglecting and obsessing over them. A lot of people neglect them. They take 30 minutes and they're done. And often these are what I call the duties and responsibilities resume. They don't take a lot of thought. I was responsible for this. I was responsible for that. I tell people, I don't care what you were responsible for. I want to know what you did. And think about it. I could be responsible for cooking dinner. And that could mean that I made a delicious 5-course meal. It could mean that I opened up a box of mac and cheese. Or I could have said, cooking, I don't think so. That's beneath me. And in all those cases, I would have been responsible for cooking dinner. Then there's what I call the compost bin resume. With compost, you take today's garbage and dump it on top of the garbage that was there before. And that's what a lot of people do with their resumes. They yank out this resume that they did 8-10 years ago and just plop their new resume on top of it. Often the old resume wasn't very good to begin with, but they haven't taken the time to think about, who am I today? How have I changed in the last 8 to 10 years? How have the markets changed? Where am I going? What's my contribution? How do I want to sell myself today? Then others will endlessly obsess over resumes. They work them, they rework them, they rework them, they rework them. But they're acting as if the resume was 100% of the job search, when actually it is only about 15%. Now, it's an important 15%, but it is only 15%. A lot of times, this is because that's all they know. All they know how to do is to work on their resume and apply to jobs online. So if they're not getting hired, got to work more on the resume. But sometimes people are avoiding, procrastinating. As long as I'm working on my resume, I don't have to do the scary things like going out there and actually talking to strangers. Now, that said, do customize your job or your resume for different jobs. Now, a word of warning about resumes and LinkedIn profiles. First point, if you don't know what you're doing, it doesn't matter how much time you spend working on your resume or your LinkedIn profile. You're not going to have a good product. I could spend a week working on the transmission of my car, and I guarantee you it would not work because I have no clue as to what I'm doing. Also, I want to warn you that hiring someone to write your resume does not guarantee that you're going to get a good resume. You see, this field is flooded. Unlike doctors who have to go to medical school or lawyers who have to go to law school and pass the bar, There is zero training needed to hang out a shingle and call yourself a resume writer or a career coach. There are a lot of amateurs out there. There are also some very unethical, crooked companies who would like nothing better than to take a big chunk of your money and give you a garbage resume. These companies hire some college kids or whatever, and they just spit out bad resumes really quickly. So beware. Now, if you would like to discuss getting help with your resume or your LinkedIn profile, I'm happy to discuss that with you, signing up for a free meeting in the chat. And there's lots more mistakes. Not taking care of your motivation, inadequate preparation for job interviews, resume mistakes, LinkedIn mistakes, asking about money too soon, not asking for more money, etc., etc. But let's recap what we talked about today. Mistake number 1, lackluster self-presentation. Mistake number 2 is focusing your job search on an online postings. Mistake number 3, searching for vacancies and openings. Mistake number 4, ineffective networking. Mistake number 5, letting others control your job search. Mistake number 6, doing it alone. Mistake number 7, failing to brand yourself. Mistake number 8, dragging negativity into your job search. And mistake number 9, neglecting your resume and endlessly obsessing over it. Okay, I told you earlier that I was going to share with you the way to access the article, 8 Things to Know About Recruiters. Don't waste your time and theirs. So that article appeared in my blog at lucrativecareers.com. Okay, as we said, after the webinar, we have a couple options. We can part ways. You'll have what I shared so far, and you can figure it out on your own. Or I can take an active role in helping you land a great job, advancing your career path, and achieving a more balanced life. If you don't want to go it alone, you can click the links on the webpage for the 15-minute phone consultation or the Career Action Plan meeting. If you're tired of struggling and settling for less than, if you're determined to reach your goals no matter what, if you're sure there's got to be something better, let's talk. Again, here's the offer, click the links on the webpage, and I really hope to talk to you soon. I'm Steve Frederick with Lucrative Careers, and whether we talk or not, I wish you all the best in your career.